All right, good morning, good afternoon, you guys. Welcome to day 2. I want to make sure that I am streaming into the Facebook group. So if you're with me here, go ahead and say hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. And yeah, you guys let me know that you can hear me and see me for day 2 of our 5-day blood sugar challenge. Today's a really good training. I like talking about the subjects we're going to cover today because it's really like the basis, the foundations of understanding how your blood sugar works. So I can see we have Holly and Sherry. Good morning. We've got Claire, Celeste, Darren, another Sherry, Christina. Awesome. Tom and Lori, Mona. Hi, Mona. Allison, Dawn, Phil. How are you guys enjoying the blood sugar challenge so far? Estella, Debbie, Kadina. That's a really pretty name, Kadina. Ron, Brad, Melanie, Kelly. Hi, everybody. Robin, Cece. Hi. Very cool. Hi, Bill, Allison, Ronnie, Mary, Jackie, Kara, Cheryl, Chris, Dergaya. Another really cool name. Monique. Liz, Cheryl, cool. A good sized group of you guys have already found us this morning, it looks like. Awesome. So what are you guys thinking of the challenge so far? I'm really excited to dive into today because if you followed the challenge the way that we've laid it out and you really tested what we told you to test on day 1, which I realized that a lot of you did not, which is fine. But if you really followed the 5-day challenge the way we've written it, we wanted you to test something that we don't necessarily recommend for day 1. Okay, so we wanted you guys to test something like oatmeal or really following the mainstream guidelines, right? So something like oatmeal or something like a meal that has 45 grams of carbs, which is what a lot of doctors and dietitians are telling people with diabetes to eat, 45 grams of carbs per meal. So we wanted you to test those guidelines for day 1 against what I'm going to teach you to eat today for day 2 and the remaining 4 days of this challenge. However, I will say a lot of people didn't follow those instructions for day 1, which is fine. And they tested foods that were more similar to what we will be teaching you today. And so they didn't see that big blood sugar spike. But we really wanted you guys to see that contrast. So you all are welcome to test a meal today and call it your day 1 test. So you can test a bowl of oatmeal or a plant-based meal like a quinoa bowl or rice and beans or something like that. Or go to the American Diabetes Association website, which was another suggestion I had, and pick a recipe from there and test before and after that meal. And use that as your day 1 test. And then today we want to test according to the guidelines that I'll share with you. Well, welcome everybody. We will hang out for just a couple more minutes. Just waiting for people to find us because it takes a minute. Maybe you guys want to share what kind of numbers you saw yesterday. Tell us specifically if you ate according to what we recommended for day 1. So did anyone here test oatmeal? If so, type oatmeal and tell us how many points the oatmeal raised your blood sugar. So Kathan said up 64 points after meal check. Yep, 64 points. So today we're going to help you get that number down significantly. And we'll give you parameters for that. Who else wants to share? I still got lots of people. Oatmeal spiked Debbie 30 points. Oatmeal spiked Deborah 64 points. Oatmeal spiked Betty 26 points. Awesome. Plant-based meal spiked Lisa 100 whopping points. Wow. Rita 48 points. Cindy only went up 15 points. I'd be curious what she ate. Vicky said 62 points from oatmeal. Guys, this is unacceptable. I mean, this is exactly what we wanted you to do. Don't get me wrong. This is what we asked you to do for day 1. But we're going to tell you what we're going to teach you today is that we can keep your blood sugar response from any given meal within a 30-point threshold. And lower is better. We'd like to really see it under 20, but we're going to teach you to keep it within a 30-point threshold, which some of you guys did on day 1 because you ate something similar to what we would recommend anyways, or maybe your medications overrode what your blood sugar would naturally be doing. But those of you who tested oatmeal saw a really big spike. We're talking 60 to 100 points for a lot of you. And some of you who saw a very small spike, and eating something like oatmeal, it could have been that your medications again overrode what your blood sugar would naturally be doing, because the medications can artificially lower your blood sugar. Or it's also possible that you pricked your finger a little too late or a little too early and you missed the peak, which is what we're actually looking for. We're looking to find when your blood sugar peaks after you eat. And it's hard to, we're just making an educated guess with the finger pricks. We tell you guys to test 60 to 90 minutes after your meal. We're kind of guessing. We're guessing that most meals will peak in your blood sugar within 60 to 90 minutes, but we really don't know. If you prick your finger at 60 minutes, it could be lower, and then at 90 minutes, it could still be climbing. So it's hard to say. Jerry tested rye bread, cheese, and fruit. So a nice little plant-based meal, right? And spiked 100 points. Up 100 points from a breakfast burrito, John. So I'm guessing that would be the tortilla and maybe potatoes if they were in there. Very cool, guys. Machaca, Joanne's went up 85 points from machaca. I'm trying to think, is that a drink? I'm blanking on what that is. And Wendy learned that eating the recommended guidelines always spiked her more than 60 points consistently. This is exactly why we're going to cover today macros, myths, and misconceptions. We are going to debunk all that mainstream nutrition advice that is keeping people like you guys stuck. If you're not testing before and after meals the way that we're teaching you, you don't see how these meals are actually impacting your blood sugar. So you're sent out the door and you're eating things that are recommended to you, like oatmeal, sweet potatoes. You're getting rid of animal protein and swapping it out for rice and beans and quinoa bowls, which are spiking the heck out of your blood sugar. You're told to eat whole grains and lots of fruit. These things are spiking your blood sugar. We're going to teach you guys. Don't worry, there are so many delicious foods that you can eat that are going to keep your blood sugar nice and stable within that 30-point threshold. But what you guys are seeing now is we're proving to you firsthand. You don't have to take my word for it. You can see it with your own numbers. Your numbers don't lie. You're seeing firsthand how your blood sugar responds to these kinds of foods. Well, very cool, guys. So this is really exciting. So it turns out a lot of you guys did exactly what we wanted you to do for day one, which was testing something according to the mainstream guidelines. Maybe something your doctor, dietitian, or diabetes educator recommended. Maybe you went to the American Diabetes Association website, or maybe just you wanted to test some foods, a meal according to something you normally eat. So maybe you eat sandwiches every day or yogurt parfaits every day, and you wanted to test something like that. So you can do this before and after testing with any kind of food that you want, any kind of meal that you want, and see for yourself how your blood sugar responds. Again, knowing that we're guessing, if you're doing the finger pricks, we're guessing your spike is going to be within 60 to 90 minutes, but it does vary depending on a lot of factors, like the composition of your meal, as well as any medications that you're on and your digestive system and that kind of thing. Melanie asks, should we try at the 60-minute mark? And if it's not horrible, also try at the 90-minute mark. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. You could do it. You could test your blood sugar in 15-minute intervals if you really wanted. You could do 45 minutes, 60 minutes, 75 minutes, and 90 minutes. That's a lot of finger pricks. But if you're willing to do that, that is an option. And what I'll tell you guys, as far as when your blood sugar will peak after your meal, it depends on so many factors, but one of them being the composition of your meal. So what we're gonna talk a lot about carbohydrates today. And one thing that I like to say about carbohydrates is that they're a double whammy for your blood sugar, because out of the 3 macronutrients, protein, fat, and carbs, we're going to talk about this in just a minute, carbohydrates spike our blood sugar the most by a long shot, and they're digested the quickest, meaning they enter our bloodstream the fastest. So if you're eating a really high carbohydrate meal, then it's going to enter your bloodstream really, really fast. Like if you have a fruit smoothie or something like that, it might spike your blood sugar within 45 minutes versus a high protein, high fat meal might take the full 90 minutes. Usually our meals are kind of a blend of all 3 of the macronutrients. And so that's why it's really hard to say exactly when to test. And then we have to take into account your digestive system. Some people have low stomach acid, so their food digests more slowly. Gastroparesis, which is a common symptom of type 2 diabetes, as well as a side effect of the most popular drugs right now, like Ozempic and Mounjaro. Gastroparesis is it slows down your digestive system. It paralyzes your digestive system. Gastroparesis, that's literally what it means. So we're going to talk about all the signs and symptoms on, I think it's day 4. I believe it's day 4. But today we're going to talk about macros, myths, and misconceptions. So I think we're ready to go ahead and dive in. We're 9 minutes after the hour. We've got a good sized group here. So let's dive into our day 2. All right, let's talk about the 3 macronutrients. A lot of people hear the word macros, hear people talk about tracking their macros, but a lot of people don't actually know what macronutrients are. So there are 3 macronutrients, and these 3 macronutrients make up all the calories in our food. I'm not a calories nutritionist. You'll rarely hear me say the word calories, but the fact is that our food is made up of these 3 macronutrients: protein, fat, and carbohydrates. Okay? And each of these 3 macronutrients has a very different impact on our blood sugar, which is what you're seeing here on my screen. Guys, I want to be really, really clear. This is not a theory. This is science. This is a fact, a well-known fact. You can look anywhere on the internet. There are so many studies showing this exact graph, this exact correlation with the 3 macronutrients and their impact on our blood sugar. So what this graph is showing us here is the carbohydrates are listed in this yellowish green color. They spike our blood sugar the most by a long shot, and I will explain why in a minute. Protein, which is in orange, has kind of a mild to moderate impact on our blood sugar. And then fat has basically no impact on our blood sugar. Meaning if you eat if you ate 500 calories of olive oil or butter, your blood sugar is not going to do anything. If you eat 500 calories of pure carbohydrates like white flour or sugar, your blood sugars spike into the Himalayas. So, and then if you're eating protein, you're somewhere in the middle, okay? It can slowly be converted. So like I said, carbohydrates are like a double whammy for our blood sugar. They enter our bloodstream the fastest on this graph here. This is time. Look how quickly the carbs spike our blood sugar compared to the protein, much slower, stable release. So carbohydrates are like a double whammy. They raise our blood sugar the most and enter our bloodstream the fastest because they're digested the most quickly. So hopefully this makes sense. Will you guys let me know, yes or no? Does this make sense so far? We're just covering basics of the 3 macronutrients: protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So when people talk about tracking their macros, they're talking about protein, fat, and carbs. And generally we track them in grams. So it's X amount of grams of protein or grams of carbs or grams of fat, right? Okay, perfect. And that's how they're listed on nutrition facts labels also. So when you see a nutrition facts label on a packaged food, it'll say total carbohydrates, 29 grams. And then underneath that are the subcategories of carbohydrates like fiber, sugar, alcohols, added sugar, total sugar, etc. Actually, that brings up a really good point. I think I catch a lot of people not knowing that sugar is a carbohydrate. So again, we're going to cover this today, but carbohydrates is a category that includes starches and sugars. Okay, cool. You guys are saying this makes sense so far. Awesome. So let's talk about carbohydrates, because a lot of people have heard and maybe demonize carbohydrates. They know that carbohydrates have something to do with blood sugar and diabetes, but nobody's talking. There's not a lot of consensus as to what degree we need to limit these carbohydrates. But here's what we need to understand. This is basic carbohydrate 101. All carbohydrates, whether they taste sweet or not, are simply chains of sugar molecules. The way somebody said it that I really like, they said, carbohydrates are just chains of sugar molecules holding hands. So what happens when we eat a food that's really high in carbohydrates, they go through the digestive process and they're broken apart. And then they flood our bloodstream as sugar molecules. So this is true whether we're talking about sugar, or even natural sources of sugar like honey and maple syrup, right? Those are still sugar as far as our body's concerned, as well as savory foods. Savory carbohydrates are also just chains of sugar molecules. They just don't taste sweet. This is why potatoes and rice and whole grains spike our blood sugar. So you guys hopefully saw on day one, some of you might have tested a sweet potato because, oh, sweet potatoes are so healthy, right? They're full of vitamins and minerals and fiber. But guess what? They're also full of blood sugar spiking carbohydrates. You eat them, those sugar molecules are broken apart. Sweet potatoes aren't even a good example because they're sweet. Let's talk about savory foods. Pasta. How many of you guys have well, if you haven't tested pasta, test pasta. You will see a savory bowl of pasta is going to spike the heck out of your blood sugar because those grains are full of carbohydrates. So we're talking bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, all those really high carbohydrate foods are just chains of sugar molecules that get broken down and flood our bloodstream and spike our blood sugar. So I understand these are healthy foods, right? I understand that fruit is healthy. Potatoes can be healthy. Brown rice and whole grains are considered healthy, but they're not healthy from a blood sugar perspective. So they're not healthy for people who are dealing with and struggling with really high blood sugar. So basically the take home message here is that our bodies don't discriminate between whole foods and processed foods when it comes to our blood sugar. It doesn't matter that a sweet potato has vitamins and minerals. It doesn't matter that whole wheat has vitamins and minerals. It doesn't matter that oatmeal has lots of vitamins and minerals. Our blood sugar, our body cares about these 3 macronutrients, and it's going to respond according to this. So our digestive system is going to break down those foods, and they're going to impact our blood sugar accordingly. Our body doesn't know the difference between white sugar and coconut sugar, right? One is less processed. The coconut sugar might be less processed and contain a little bit more vitamins and minerals. But as far as our body's concerned, sugar is sugar and carbs are sugar, and they're going to break down into sugar. So hopefully this makes sense so far. You guys are saying, yes, this makes sense. So again, the take home message being that from a blood sugar perspective, not all calories are created equal. So I'll give you another example. Like I said, I'm not a calories nutritionist. I really don't believe, I think calories are so overrated, and I really don't believe we need to focus on calories. But because so many people are focused on calories, I will speak to this. So again, I'll use the 500 calorie example, right? Let's say you eat, like so many of you did yesterday for day 1 of our 5-day challenge. I asked you to eat something higher in carbohydrates than I really actually would recommend. Okay, so yesterday I asked you to eat something like oatmeal or a rice and beans plant-based bowl or a quinoa bowl, or to measure out your carbs and eat a meal that had 45 grams of carbs, because that's what so many of you guys were recommended to eat. Let's say you do that. Let's say you eat 500 calories of oatmeal. And then let's say another day you eat 500 calories of a high protein, high fat meal that's low in carbs. Let's say you eat eggs cooked in butter with bacon and avocado, 500 calories. Both meals, 500 calories. Both meals are going to have 2 entirely different impacts on your blood sugar. Okay, this is just one simple example. So this is, for example, day 1, oatmeal. Your blood sugar is going to spike from that oatmeal. The eggs and bacon and avocado, your blood sugar is staying right here, nice and stable. And that's what we're going to teach you guys to do today. So following the guidelines we teach you today, you guys are going to see that it's very easy to stay within a 30-point threshold. And a lot of you guys are going to be really surprised to see that your blood sugar pretty much stays the same. And what's really cool about this is we are not asking you to eat small portions. We actually really want you testing a big portion of food. So if it takes 4 eggs and 5 slices of bacon and a whole avocado and a tablespoon or 2 of butter, that is perfectly fine. We are not concerned with calories in the slightest. We're concerned with how your blood sugar is going to respond to these foods. And I promise you guys, on day 3, I believe it is, of the challenge, which is tomorrow, we're going to talk about the connection with weight gain and diabetes. So again, calories are not the issue here. Weight gain is very much related to insulin, and we're going to be getting a really clear understanding of insulin throughout the remaining days of this challenge. But we have to cover the basics first. So today we're talking about macronutrients and how they impact our blood sugar. So again, not all calories are created equal. I also want to hit this point home a little bit further by explaining that a lot of people aren't looking at these various diets from a macronutrient perspective. So let's hash it out real quick. When we eliminate animal source protein, when we follow a vegan, vegetarian, or plant-based diet, that is naturally high in carbohydrates. Because guess what? Animal protein, beef, chicken, pork, lamb, fish, 0 carbs. 0. Gonna keep your blood sugar. Look at that. Animal protein is pure protein. Animal foods, animal source foods are pure protein and fat, no carbs. So you eliminate those foods, and guess what you swap them out for? Rice and beans, quinoa, whole grains, oatmeal. Those are the foods that are really high in carbohydrates. Beans and rice, for example, you have to eat 3 cups of beans and rice to get the amount of protein found in 4 ounces of steak. 4 ounces of steak. Guess how many carbohydrates are in 3 cups of rice and beans? First of all, that would be hard to eat that much, but holy cow, they're not a good source of protein. They're a good source of carbohydrates, and we know what carbohydrates do to our blood sugar. So a lot of people are told, it looks good on paper, right? They're told to go vegan, go plant-based, go vegetarian, eat less animal protein. All the while, unknowingly, they're swapping out the most blood sugar friendly foods for blood sugar spiking foods. So vegan, vegetarian, and plant-based diets, I think, are a terrible approach for type 2 diabetes or anyone dealing with high blood sugar. Low-fat diets, again, so coming back to the 3 macronutrients, we only have protein, fat, and carbs. If you take out the fat, you're left with protein and carbs. And a lot of times we remove protein when we follow a low-fat diet because we're afraid of a lot of the animal protein contains fat, right? If you buy a steak or you buy some ground beef or you buy some chicken thighs, there's fat with it. So if you're following a low-fat diet, a lot of times you're following a high-carbohydrate diet. When we choose low-fat packaged foods, when we choose low-fat dairy, we're choosing dairy that contains a higher amount of carbohydrates in lieu of the fat. So low-fat diets tend to be a little higher in carbohydrates, and low-calorie diets, same thing, because a low-calorie diet's usually based in low-fat. And so again, you remove one of those macronutrients and you're left with the other 2. So it tends to be higher in carbohydrates. The one of these, the bullet point here that I have the biggest issue with though, is the vegan, vegetarian, and plant-based diets for diabetes. If you guys, again, you don't have to take my word for it. Don't trust me blindly. Test before and after your meals. Test a plant-based meal and see how your blood sugar responds. See how difficult it is to stay within that 30-point threshold from a plant-based meal compared to what we're going to teach you today. Because I'm telling you, it's really, really difficult. We remove the most blood sugar-friendly foods, and then we replace them with rice and beans and quinoa and whole grains, and those things just spike our blood sugar. Okay, so is this making sense so far, you guys? Another tip for you is to avoid naked carbs. And it's for the exact reasons I already mentioned. Carbohydrates are a double whammy for our blood sugar. They spike our blood sugar the most, and they enter our bloodstream the fastest of the 3 macronutrients. So when we say avoid naked carbs, what we mean is avoid eating a carbohydrate dense meal without protein and fat, which are going to buffer it. So protein and fat act like buffers for our blood sugar. They really slow down the release of carbohydrates into the bloodstream. They kind of water down the blood sugar response. So an example of a naked carbs would be eating fruit as a snack between meals. It sounds healthy, it looks healthy on paper, but the fruit is mostly predominantly carbohydrates. There's not a lot of protein and fat. There's little to no protein and fat. Or having a smoothie or fruit for breakfast or oatmeal for breakfast or cereal for breakfast. There's not a lot of protein and carbs. There's not a lot of protein and fat, which are going to buffer the carbs. So a really big tip is to avoid naked carbohydrates. All right, you guys are saying, yes, this makes sense. There's a quote from Nina T. Schultz I'd like to read here. I absolutely love this quote. So it just really solidifies what we're talking about here. So what she says is, when you understand that even healthy whole grains and fruit can cause blood sugars to spike as much as simple sugars, that's the turning point. Because while everyone agrees that sugar is bad, what is also bad are those seemingly healthy foods that instantly turn to sugar in your blood. She's calling out potatoes, rice, oatmeal, right? This is exactly what she's calling out. When you understand that healthy whole grains and fruit, right, these whole foods, can cause blood sugars to spike as much as simple sugars, that's the turning point. It is the turning point. So this is the limitation of eating whole foods. It looks good on paper, it sounds right, but guys, if you've got high blood sugar, type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, PCOS, all these issues related to insulin resistance, if you have these issues, then it's not as simple as just cleaning up your diet and eating healthier, eating whole foods. This is a therapeutic, targeted approach for high blood sugar and diabetes. It requires a next level approach. It's not just cleaning up your diet and doing Whole30. You can eat a Whole30 diet that's really high in carbohydrates. You can also do a Whole30 diet that's really low in carbohydrates and very blood sugar friendly. That would be a perfect approach. In fact, you can follow any diet and make it low carb, pretty much, besides what I mentioned, like the vegan or vegetarian diet. But you can do a low carb paleo diet. You can do a low carb Mediterranean diet. You could do a low carb Latin American diet. You could do a low carb German diet if you want. You could do any of these things, but it has to be low in carbohydrates. So I think that this is making sense. You guys are saying that it is. But I really want to hammer this point home. It's not just about getting rid of junk food and eating whole foods, because you can get rid of junk food and replace, I don't know, chips with potatoes, right? Healthier swap, still not blood sugar friendly. Okay. So this gets into our micro assignment for today. Let's talk about the guidelines I'm going to give you, and you guys will get a copy of this in your email, and it's been posted in the Facebook group. So this is your guide for the rest of the week. We're going to be asking you guys to test one meal a day, just like you did yesterday. Test right before your first bite and then 60 to 90 minutes afterwards, following these guidelines, okay? So I'll go through this with you and you guys can ask questions, but I want to be really, really clear that this is not a comprehensive list, okay? This is a small list that I created for the sake of our 5-day challenge. It's just for the sake of our 5 days together, because we don't have a lot of time together. So we want to keep it really, really simple with simple ingredients that you all probably have. You guys can all probably make a meal from this list. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick at least one item from each column here. There's 3 columns. The first column has your animal source protein. So again, the meals that you compose are going to have at least one item from each list, okay? You guys can mix and match. You can do multiple items from each list. First column is your animal protein. Any animal protein is perfectly fine. So beef, chicken, eggs. I know we have some vegetarians that signed up for this. So if you're willing to eat eggs, that would be a good choice for you. Fish, goat, lamb, organ meats if you like liver or things like that. Pork, shellfish, and mollusks. So any seafood. Sugar-free sausage or bacon, perfectly fine. Ideally choose nitrate-free, but for the sake of the challenge, sausage and bacon are fine, or other cured meats like salami and things like that. Turkey, waterfowl, and wild game like duck or deer or whatever else. So Okay, that's our first column. And if there's something not listed like caribou, go for it. I know we've got clients in Alaska um, who are doing hunt caribou and moose. That would be perfectly fine for the first column as well. So any animal source protein, that's the first column. Second column is your low carb vegetables or low carb plant-based foods, right? So there are tons, you guys. We're not, it's like people freak out when they're told, oh, I shouldn't be eating potatoes. Well, look how many options there are. Delicious options. We've got asparagus, avocado, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower. So basically, all of your cruciferous vegetables, also known as brassicas, those are perfectly fine. Celery, cucumber, eggplant, green beans, leafy greens, lemons and limes, mushrooms, olives, peppers, seaweed, and zucchini. Okay, so that's your second column of plant foods. And then your third column are natural fats. I don't really like to use the words, I don't like to call them healthy fats because there's not a lot of consensus around what's healthy. In my book, any fat that is natural is a healthy fat. It's the man-made fats that have gotten us in trouble. It's the margarine and the canola oil, right? These highly processed fats that are really bad for us and very inflammatory. But any natural fat is perfectly fine, you guys. So avocado oil is going to be your best bet. I recommend everybody who's got a quote vegetable oil in their cabinet, throw it out and swap it out for avocado oil. Vegetable oils, by the way, are not made from vegetables. They're made from highly processed, generally seed oils. The canola plant being one of the most popular, canola is not a vegetable, but they call it a vegetable oil, okay? Cottonseed oil, cotton's not a vegetable. So we've been totally duped. These have been mislabeled. They're very deceiving, but these are not made from vegetables. So we don't want you eating, quote, vegetable oils. Instead, choose some of the natural fats on this list. So we've got avocado oil, very neutral tasting. We've got avocado oil-based mayonnaise because most mayonnaise are made from canola oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil, whatever, junk oils. So if you get an avocado oil-based mayonnaise, you can use bacon grease or any animal fat. Butter is a great fat, makes everything taste delicious. Coconut oil, ghee, which is clarified butter, lard, again, any animal fat, so tallow, suet, MCT oil generally used as a supplement in small amounts, but you're welcome to use that, and olive oil. Okay, so extra virgin olive oil would also be a great choice, although I don't recommend using it for high heat cooking. So I see some of you guys are asking how many carbs per day or whatever, carbs per meal. We're not actually putting a limit on that for you. What we're doing instead to keep it really, really simple and streamlined, because again, we only have a few days together, is we're giving you this list. And so we just want you guys choosing food from this list. We're not making you guys track anything or calculate anything or add anything up. If you follow this list, you will get results. I promise you. At the bottom here, we have approved additions. So again, you have to choose an item from each column for this to work. Okay. So your animal protein should be kind of the bulk of your meal. And then you can add in some low carb plant foods like vegetables. And then your last column there is the fats. And you don't have to add large amounts. I mean, you're welcome to, but just use butter or bacon grease or whatever it is that you want to saute your vegetables or just cook your meat in, or, use natural amounts. We don't have to go over the top here. So approved additions at the very bottom in small font. We've got nuts and seeds. Okay. Any nuts and seeds are perfectly fine. As long as they're not like candy coated, right? Herbs and spices. You can use unflavored collagen. There are definitely some flavored collagen brands out there that would be approved, but again, for the sake of this challenge, it's just kind of easier to say unflavored because a lot of the flavored ones have sugar and artificial sweeteners and things that we want to avoid. You can add in up to 1/3 cup of berries. Berries are lower in carbs than other fruits, so that is the reason behind it. But again, these are additions. You have to still eat from the 3 columns. We don't want you having the naked carbs. So don't go have 1/3 cup of berries with something not on this list and expect that your blood sugar is going to respond well, because it's not. So again, use your protein and fat to buffer the carbs from these additions at the bottom, like the berries. Almost all dairy would be approved. We just want to choose whole fat dairy. So always choose full fat dairy, and we're not going to be doing milk as a beverage, okay? But what we're talking about here is cheese. You are absolutely welcome to add cheese to your meal, half and half, heavy whipping cream, plain yogurt. Again, full fat always. Plain yogurt, plain cottage cheese, full fat cottage cheese. These are good options to add in. Again, remembering that when we choose low fat yogurt, it's higher in carbs than full fat yogurt, because there's only the 3 macronutrients. When we remove the fat, we increase the carbs. So the full fat dairy is going to be a much better choice from a blood sugar perspective. John, grapeseed oil, unfortunately, is considered one of those inflammatory vegetable oils. Yeah, I know. It's very unfortunate. We've been totally duped about them. But just think back, think what, for example, we can squeeze, right? We can cold press olives and oil will ooze out of them. We can cook down avocado and oil oozes out, right? To get oil out of the grape seed or a cotton seed or a canola flour, holy cow, just YouTube it, you guys. There's a 5-minute, I think it's like 5-minute YouTube video showing how canola oil is made. It's disgusting. It's a flour that's toxic to humans, and then the way that they have to process it with high heat, chemical solvents, apparently it smells so bad that they have to deodorize it afterwards and bleach it. So it's just totally rancid and damaged before it's even bottled. So we want to stick to these more natural fats that Mother Nature intended us to eat. Hi, Jamie. Jamie says, is cheese animal protein? No, cheese is perfectly approved. You can add it to your meal, but we still want you to be very clear. We still want you choosing one of these sources of animal protein in the first column. So we want you choosing an item from each column here. So last night, I'll give you guys an example I had for dinner last night. It was delicious and so easy, and pretty inexpensive too. I got a clamshell of spinach, like a big clamshell container of spinach. And then I got a pound of ground beef, and then I sauteed up, I cooked the ground beef, I sauteed up a bell pepper, onion, seasoned it up really good with cumin and chili powder and all kinds of spices, and then I threw in the spinach at the end and wilted it down, so it was just a bowl. It was just a bowl of ground beef with bell peppers, onions, and a bunch of spinach mixed in, and then I topped it with cheese as it was finishing, so it melted over the top, and I had some hot sauce, and it was delicious. Super blood sugar friendly. Totally compliant on this list. And I did add a little avocado oil as I was cooking, sauteing the onions and bell peppers. But that's just a simple example, right? And then afterwards, if I had a sweet tooth, I could have had that 3rd cup of berries with some cottage cheese or some Greek yogurt, right? And then I would have satisfied my sweet tooth. I wouldn't be eating those carbs naked. So that's just one example, but there's so many others. You guys can have a lot of fun with this list. I know you guys are asking about specific ingredients at this point. Again, I'm just going to repeat that this is not a comprehensive list. Okay, this is a list because we only have 5 days together. We only have 4 days left together. Mary, thank you. She says this is absolutely spot on. Amazing class. Thanks, Mary. If you don't eat eggs, no, you guys, if there's something you don't eat on this list, you don't have to eat anything you don't like. We want you to enjoy every single thing that you eat, okay? So I know, and also not only do people have different preferences, because everybody's got a different palate here. For example, I wish I loved liver. I wish I liked organ meats, but I don't. I didn't grow up on them. It's kind of an acquired taste for a lot of people, and I don't like it. I take it in capsules because it's Mother Nature's multivitamin. It's incredibly nutritious, but I'm not gonna make liver and onions because I don't have a palate for it. Some people are allergic to things. Some people have shellfish allergies. You're obviously gonna avoid the shellfish, right? So you don't have to eat anything on this list that you don't like or you don't tolerate. For those of you who are strictly vegan or vegetarian, obviously you're not going to be able to follow this as written. And this is really not a suitable approach for you. But what I can say for those of you who are strict vegan and vegetarian, if you don't eat eggs and you don't eat poultry and you don't eat any seafood, okay, if you don't eat any source of animal protein, what you're going to do is really, you're going to focus on these two columns. And the problem is that even these, the second column of plant-based foods contain carbs, and you really don't have a good source of protein to buffer them. And that's a little bit of a problem from a blood sugar perspective. So you're going to use a generous amount of fat, and you're going to fill up on these foods. So maybe you do something like a veggie stir fry. Tofu is not my favorite source of protein, but I guess if you're in that boat, you could do something like tempeh or tofu. But to be really, really clear, that's not what I recommend. But I also understand that some of you guys, for religious reasons or other reasons, don't eat animal source protein or animal source foods. So for you guys, you're just going to follow these other two columns. And you're going to have a harder time keeping your blood sugar within the 30-point threshold that we're recommending today. But for the rest of you guys, what we really want you to do is to follow these guidelines and eat a really big meal. I am not kidding you. I would love for you guys to eat a 16-ounce ribeye with some asparagus cooked in butter. Perfect. Have at it. Have, again, like I said, have 4 eggs and 5 slices of bacon. Nothing wrong with that. You can do, we really want you doing it up. And one mistake, I'm just going to say it. You guys might see that your blood sugar could spike more than 30 points. Usually it would be because you did not eat enough animal protein to buffer the carbs found in the second column. Okay, so this is not zero carbohydrates, you guys. This is not a zero carbohydrate plan. This is not necessarily a keto plan. It shares some similarities, but it's not zero carb. It's not keto, because keto would be high fat. I'm not telling you have to eat high fat. You do want to have some fat with your meal. Usually you're just cooking your vegetables in it or searing your meat in it or whatever. Also here on the left, again, because this is not a comprehensive list, but I have a lot of you guys ask, tomatoes and onions would also be okay. Okay. Tomatoes happen to have a good amount of carbs. They're not like as high as a potato or anything. But it was kind of why I didn't include them on the original list. So don't go too heavy. Right? You don't want to have like tomato sauce can be cooked down and really concentrated. And so that those carbs can add up. So you don't want to do something super tomato heavy, but it's perfectly fine if you want to add some cherry tomatoes to a salad or a stir fry or whatever kind of tomatoes. If you want to do them in a reasonable amount. And onions, same kind of thing. Okay. So I think we're clear on that. I know that we have specific questions coming in. Yes, turkey would be permissible. But yeah, I think that we're clear, guys. And that's listed in the Facebook group and will come out in your email tonight. Let's talk about approved beverages. We're going to keep beverages really, really simple, guys. We're going to stick to still or sparkling water. You can infuse your water with lemon or lime, which are on the approved list. I love adding cucumbers to my water. In fact, every time I slice open a cucumber, I scoop the seeds out and put it in my water. You could do herbs, so you can do like mint and cucumber, something like that. You can buy some infused sparkling waters. My favorite brand is Spindrift. They use really clean ingredients. There's nothing questionable in them. Obviously certain flavors have more carbs because they have like real juice in them. So I would recommend, actually I'll grab one. I'll show you guys. I would recommend sticking to the lemon, the lime. They make a really cool tea one. Show you guys. So this is Spindrift. If you see these in grocery stores, they're everywhere. I've seen them in Target. I've seen them in Safeway. All kinds of stuff. Here we go. Now you can see a little better. So this is the lime Spindrift. What's really cool about Spindrifts is that they're made with real juice. There's no questionable ingredients in these. Versus a lot of the sparkling waters say natural flavors, which is a blanket term. We don't really know what it is. Again, some of these have like orange juice in them. You don't want to choose those flavors. Choose the lemon, the lime. There's one I really like that's half and half. It's half black tea, or it's black tea with a little bit of lemon. That one's really, really good. Yeah, but you guys can look. There's a raspberry lime that's only got 1 or 2 grams of carbs per can. This one's 1 gram per can. So these are really good. Other beverages, you can have unsweetened coffee or tea. I will talk about sweeteners here in just a second, so hang tight. Unsweetened coffee or tea. And then half and half or heavy cream, which most often are used to add to your drink. So I recommend, again, if you were to choose between half and half or heavy whipping cream, which do you think we would choose? Which do you think is better from a blood sugar perspective? And I see Brandon and Claudia, who are clients of mine and already know this. They're in the chat. But between half and heavy whipping cream, which do you think is a better choice from a blood sugar perspective, and why? You guys can type HWC. That's what we call heavy whipping cream. And I will tell you, it's what I use in my coffee every single day. Donna says Spindrifts are her go-to. Yeah, me too. I absolutely love them and almost always have them in my fridge. Heavy cream, Kristen says. Yep, heavy cream. Yep. You guys got it. Why? The heavy cream is lower in carbs because it's higher in fat. We always want to choose, yeah, Wendy said it, more fat. We always want to choose the highest fat source of dairy. So again, when you're faced with two options, we've been conditioned to think fat is bad. It is not. Fat is not what's making us fat, guys. As our nation has gone lower and lower fat, our health has gotten worse and worse. Obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, all on the rise. As we cut fat, we are increasing dietary diseases. We're going to talk about that a lot in depth tomorrow. But yeah, so we recommend half and half is fine. But heavy whipping cream is even better because it has more fat and less carbs, and it's more blood sugar friendly because of it. And I am telling you, I don't know anyone who has switched to heavy whipping cream and wanted to go back to half and half. It is so much more decadent in your coffee. It's so tasty. You can get one of those $20 little handheld frothers. They're like with a little whisk on the end, and you can whip your heavy whipping cream and then put it on top of your coffee, and you have single ingredient whipped cream, and it's so tasty. Okay. So those of you who, I said unsweetened coffee or tea. So some people are like, wait, what about approved sweeteners? So here's our list of approved sweeteners. Okay, guys, I'm giving you so many of, these are like the basis of the guidelines for my paid program, the Type 2 Transformation Program. Please memorize these lists. You're going to get them in your email. They're posted in the Facebook group. Take pictures, screenshot, print, do what you got to do. This is gold. We have people complete this 5-day challenge, come back to us 3 months later, diabetes in remission, off medications, A1C out of the danger zone, because they're following these guidelines consistently. You don't have to do it perfectly 100% of the time, but if you do a good job and you do this the majority of the time, I promise your A1C is going to blow you away at your next 3-month checkup. Approved sweeteners: monk fruit, stevia, erythritol, and allulose. Okay? These are either natural, like monk fruit and stevia are natural, or they're sugar alcohols like erythritol and allulose. So these won't spike your blood sugar. They won't have an impact on your blood sugar. And they're perfectly fine. So if you want to add some stevia drops to your coffee, or a monk fruit erythritol blend, which a lot of those monk fruit sweeteners are a blend of monk fruit and erythritol, that would be fine. You can sweeten up your drinks. You can sweeten up your yogurt. Do what you want to do with these, okay? And then not listed. I want to be really, really clear. So we have our list here. Let's talk about what's not on this list, because what I've learned, I've done this challenge probably well over a dozen times, and what I've learned is people accidentally eat foods that are not on this list. And then they see their blood sugar spikes more than 30 points, and they don't know why. So let's talk about what's not on the list. Grains are not on the list. And grain products are not on the list. So anything made from grains, like pasta, like bread, like flour, like tortillas, right? We have people go, oh, I ate a low carb tortilla. Turns out it wasn't so low carb, spiked your blood sugar, right? We see that all the time. Oh, I ate a slice or two of keto bread. It said it was low carb keto bread. Spiked your blood sugar. Those foods are not on this list. You have to read the ingredients list on packaged foods. They can put whatever they want on the front of the package. It's our job to turn over the package, find the ingredients list, and read that fine print and see what's actually in it. Because I'm telling you, a lot of those keto breads and keto tortillas are not keto at all. They're not low carb at all. The first ingredient's wheat. That's a grain. It's going to spike your blood sugar. So not on the list are grains and grain products. And guys, I promise you can do this. I know it sounds, if you think this sounds restrictive, just go back to focusing on the list of foods you can eat and fill up on those. You'll be more satiated for longer. Beans and legumes are not on the list because, like I mentioned earlier, they're not actually a good source of protein. They're a good source of carbohydrates. Again, we've been duped to believe that beans are a good source of protein. They're not. A good source of protein is your animal protein, your beef, chicken, pork, lamb, etc., fish, seafood. Again, I'm going to say it for those of you who maybe didn't hear me the first time or joined late. It takes 3 cups of beans to get the same amount of protein as 4 ounces of steak. 4 ounces of steak. It's like this much. I don't know about you guys, but I always eat at least 12 ounces of steak when I'm having steak. So that's, and the steak has 0 carbs. 0. So beans and legumes are not on the list for that reason. I want to be clear when I say grains, quinoa, corn, rice, these are all grains, not just wheat. Wheat and oats are also grains. So these are all kind of filler foods. They're filler foods. They're not really that nutritious. And I promise you, you can get all the nutrition, in fact, more nutrition when you eat following our guidelines versus filling your plate with grains and beans and rice, okay? Starchy vegetables are not on the list. So general rule, there are exceptions. Generally, if a vegetable grows underneath the ground, if it's a root vegetable like beets and potatoes and carrots, it's going to be higher in carbohydrates. So it's considered a starchy vegetable. So not on the list are starchy vegetables. That doesn't mean in the future you can't have them ever. It's just, again, for the sake of the challenge, we want to avoid those starchy vegetables. We're trying to prove a point here of how your blood sugar is going to respond to our guidelines. Starchy alternative flours. Here's another mistake people make. Is they start choosing products like crackers that are made like almond flour crackers or gluten-free crackers. But when you look at the ingredients list, they can be just as high in carbohydrates because they're made with starchy flours. So they might be gluten-free because they're not made with wheat flour, but they're made with tapioca flour and arrowroot flour and cassava flour and these healthy alternative flours that are just as high in carbohydrates as wheat flour. So it's not that those almond flour crackers made with arrowroot and cassava are bad from an ingredient perspective. They're bad from a blood sugar perspective. So if they're really made with just almond flour, coconut flour, things like that, that's fine. But if their primary ingredients are these starchy flours, they're going to spike your blood sugar. And that goes for the tortillas. Like Siete is a really popular healthy brand of tortillas that are made with almond flour, but they're also made with loads of these starchy flours that really spike people's blood sugar. And I have lots of clients test them out and they say, nope, can't do it. So we find better alternatives for them. Also not listed, juice. We are not doing fruit or vegetable juice, guys. This is pure sugar. This is pure carbohydrates going straight to your bloodstream. It's going to spike you in probably 20 minutes, you know? Might as well be hooked up to a injection with the juices or the smoothies. It's just going right through you. Milk as a beverage, not a good choice. Again, we're not anti-dairy. You can have dairy. If a recipe calls for a little bit of milk, that's not a problem. It's drinking 8 or 12 or 16 ounces of milk with your meal or between meals, that's an issue. And And then fruit is not on the list. Again, the exception being a third a cup of berries, but paired with your meal. We want to avoid those naked carbs. Okay. We're not trying to demonize fruit here. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do it where you pair it with lots of animal protein and fat, and you buffer it with those foods on the list over here. But fruit on an empty stomach, not a good choice. Okay. But we just want you guys following the guidelines for today. It's our one ask. We don't want to make a whole bunch of exceptions to this list. This is a good list. Guys, at this point, we've had so many thousands of people do this 5-day challenge and get results following these guidelines. Get results not only within our 5 days together, but continue to follow these guidelines and knock their A1C out of the park by doing this consistently. So, yeah. Learn something new on the root veggies. Yeah, the root veggies. It's a good thing to remember too. And there, like I said, there are exceptions. Another exception is of a vegetable that doesn't actually grow underground that's high in carbs is winter squash. And we are going into fall and winter right now. So winter squash are a little sweeter. Again, they're not like entirely off limits, but you do have to consider the fact that they're higher in carbs and gonna spike your blood sugar more. So winter squash are things like butternut squash, acorn squash, pumpkin. They're generally the squash that have the inedible hard outer shell, and they're sweeter. Versus summer squash are things like zucchini and, the patty pan squash and things like that. Yes, Debbie, you can use vinegar and oil for your salad. Yes, Claudia said that quinoa raises her blood sugar. Yep. Quinoa is, okay, yes. Dan said quinoa is a seed and not a grain. Okay, correct. I stand corrected. Quinoa is a seed, not a grain, but it's higher in carbs and it does spike blood sugar. Okay, I want to just give a shout out to Claudia and Brandon and John, who are all clients of mine, and they're in the Facebook chat supporting you guys and answering your questions. You guys, thank you so much, because there's a lot of questions coming in. Awesome. And Anne says she's committed to following the guidelines. Yeah, you just see for yourself, guys. You see for yourself how your blood sugar responds this week, and you should be very motivated to continue eating this. Again, you don't have to do it 100% of the time perfectly, but if you do this consistently, you will be very, very happy with your next A1C. And give that A1C a full 90 days of following this to get a true reflection of how your A1C responds. Because again, the A1C is a 90-day average based on the lifespan, the 90-day lifespan of our red blood cells. So ideally, we really do give it the full 90 days. Okay, so we're clear on that. We're clear on what's not on the list. And we just want to be really, really clear with you guys that you don't need to eat less food. You just need to eat the right foods, you guys. This is not about eating less. We actually, yes, Tom, garlic is A-okay. You don't need to eat less food. We want you guys filling up. Like I said, have the 16-ounce ribeye. Have 4 chicken thighs if that's what it takes. Have a half a chicken or a whole chicken if that's what it takes. It's not about eating less. We actually really, really, really don't want you eating small portions. We want you eating big, satiating portions following our guidelines. We want to prove to you that you can keep your blood sugar right here, right? You're not going to see those big peaks and valleys. Gone are the days that you're having a 70 or 100 point spike from your meals. When you follow these guidelines, you'll stay within a 30-point threshold. You just need to eat the right foods, and really, please prioritize the animal protein. Prioritize that first column of animal protein. Those are the most blood sugar friendly foods. Those are much more blood sugar friendly than even the foods in the second column that are compliant, right? But what's more blood sugar friendly? A steak or the asparagus and broccoli? The steak is, guys, because the macronutrients, it's pure protein and fat, 0 carbs. It's not going to do anything to your blood sugar, really. Legumes and beans are not on the list. I saw that question just come in. What kind of bread can we test? We don't recommend eating bread or grain products, but if you can find a bread that's truly just made with like almond flour and coconut flour, eggs, psyllium husk, like truly check the ingredients list and there's nothing in it that's high in carbs, you could test that. There are a couple brands out there doing that, but most of them are very deceiving. They're saying that they're lower carb than they are. So for the sake of this challenge, we don't really want you guys eating those things. We want you guys following the guidelines as they're written. You're so sweet, Claudia. Oh, okay. Broccoli and cauliflower were on the list, Judy. And edamame was not. Edamame would be considered a legume. So kind of like a beans and legumes are not on the list. What can I use to make a sandwich? You can use a lettuce wrap. You can do lettuce wrap. You can do, I really like egg life wraps. A lot of my clients like these. They're found in the refrigerated section of grocery stores. These are kind of like a tortilla, but they're made with egg whites. And they're like 1 gram of carb per wrap. They're very filling because they're actually made with eggs. There's all kinds of options out there that, again, we're trying to just keep it simple for the 5-day challenge. I mean, we want to support you, but we have a lot to cover and we're at the hour mark. So again, public service announcement, do not skimp. We want you eating a big, satiating meal. Again, we are going to use the same instructions as we used yesterday to test before and after your meal. So what you're going to do is you're going to test either lunch or dinner today. And you're going to do this the remainder of the challenge. And you're going to sit down for a meal following our guidelines that we just went over. So immediately before your first bite, you test your blood sugar, whether you're wearing a CGM or a finger prick. You test your blood sugar, make a mental note or write it down, and then eat your meal. Start the clock after your first bite. Wait 60 to 90 minutes, anywhere between 60 and 90 minutes. Test your blood sugar again, and then do the math and see how much your blood sugar rose from that meal. Our goal that we didn't talk about yesterday is to keep your blood sugar within a 30-point threshold. So if your blood sugar starts at 100 and goes up to 125, then you went up 25 points. Give yourself a big pat on the back, a round of applause. You did a great job. It was a blood sugar friendly meal. Same thing for those of you who have really high blood sugar. Let's say your blood sugar starts at 250 before your first bite, but you eat a meal and you test 60 to 90 minutes later and it goes up to 265. You only went up 15 points. Again, give yourself a pat on the back. You do that consistently. It does not matter. I promise you guys, we've worked with thousands of people actually with the 5-day challenge and the type 2 transformation program. Guys, you do that consistently, your A1C will come down. So if you stay within that 30-point threshold consistently, your A1C will come down. I've never seen it any other way. And it doesn't matter. This goes even for those of you who have really high blood sugar right now. Even if your baseline number is in the 200s before your first bite of food, does not matter. You can still eat in a blood sugar friendly way. And that's what's so promising about what we're teaching you this week. You can start with a blood sugar 250. And if you keep it within that 30-point threshold, you did great. And so what we want you to do, we have the day 2 post in the Facebook group. It looks like this. You're just going to do the math and drop that number in the chat. We don't need to know your before and after numbers. We just want you to do the math. So again, if you go from 250 to 265, then you went up 15 points. So all you do is go to the day 2 post and say, my blood sugar went up 15 points from lunch today. We love to hear what you ate. So it's really cool if you'll share with us what it was that you tested today. That's day 2. Trial and error. Here's what you're going to see myself and our coaches. As a reminder, we have 4 functional nutritionists supporting you guys this week in our Facebook group. So myself, but also we have Callista, also known as Callie. So we have Callista, Tiana, and Katie. All 4 of us are in the Facebook group responding to you guys, along with a lot of our awesome members from the Type 2 Transformation Program who know a lot about what we're teaching you, and they're in there supporting you as well. So what you're going to see this week is if a meal increases your blood sugar by more than 30 points, stop and think about what the culprit could have been. Okay? Either it's one of 2 things almost always. Either you ate something that was not on our list. right? Maybe you wanted to test a low carb tortilla or a low carb keto bread. Or maybe you forgot or you tested a soda or something. So either you ate something that was not on the list, or maybe you had a sauce or a salad dressing that had some sneaky ingredients like flour and sugar and you didn't realize it. So either you ate something that was not on our list, or the other thing is there could have been a meter error. So remember, all blood sugar meters, whether we're talking, it doesn't matter which brand you're talking about, they all have a 15% margin of error. We talked about that yesterday in day one. All glucose meters have a 15% margin of error. They are not 100% accurate. So it's possible that when you test your blood sugar before your first bite, it could say your blood sugar's lower than it really was. And then 60 to 90 minutes later, when you test again, it could say it's 15% higher than it really was, which can make that 30-point spread look bigger than it was, right? So you might go, oh, how did the steak and asparagus cooked in butter spike my blood sugar 33 points or 35 points or 40 points? And we're going to probably go, if that's really all you had, we're going to chalk that up to a meter error. So we'll see that happening a little bit too, you guys. Don't be discouraged if you feel like you got a meter error. That happens. That's what we're here for. It's just kind of pick you guys back up and say, nope, what you ate was a blood sugar friendly meal. We guarantee that didn't spike you. Or sometimes the other mistake people make is they eat too little animal protein and way too many vegetables. So they don't have enough of that protein and fat to buffer the carbs in the vegetables. So you can eat on this list, right? But if you only have 2 ounces of ground beef and you're just loading up on cauliflower and broccoli and green beans and all these things, then you don't have enough protein and fat to offset, to buffer the carbs in those vegetables. So again, we want you really prioritizing the animal protein. Have some vegetables, right? They're good for you. They give you more variety. They're enjoyable. And you don't have to eat anything you don't like. So remember that too. In fact, I would go so far as to say if you are someone who doesn't like vegetables, you can actually still do just fine, really just focusing on the animal protein and following this list that way. All right, so are we clear on today? Here's the day 2 post. And then for day 3, you guys, we're going to talk about insulin. So day 3 and day 4 are dedicated to insulin, really getting a clear understanding of this very notorious and misunderstood hormone called insulin, which all of us are creating. And we have been totally duped to believe that people with type 2 diabetes don't produce enough insulin, when in reality, y'all are dealing with something known as hyperinsulinemia. It's chronically high insulin levels that are making you insulin resistant and keeping you sick and diabetic. So we're going to get into that tomorrow. You guys are going to get a really clear understanding of how insulin works and how to actually use insulin to your advantage to reverse insulin resistance and reverse type 2 diabetes. So really, really cool. Looking forward to day 3, guys. We'll see you over in the Facebook group. We'll look forward to seeing your day 2 posts. And yeah, you guys will all get an email tonight with today's replay, as well as it can be found in the top of our Facebook group under the featured tab. All right, you guys, thanks for hanging out today. You guys all have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you soon. All right, I think we are live. Let's see. All right, I think we're live for the 5-day blood sugar challenge. If you all could do me a favor and say hello in the chat, let me know that you can hear me and see me on this beautiful Monday morning. I hope you guys are all having an awesome day so far and had an awesome weekend. I know that we've got a lot of first timers signed up for our 5-day challenge this time around, so it's always a little hard on day 1 for people to find us in the Facebook group. Find